Welcome to Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible, where I pull from Warhammer 40k lore to help explain biblical lore. Today we're going to be going over Mortarion, the demon prince of Nurgle. And before we get into the video, take the wikis with a grain of salt. But as some things have, been retconned and all that. And I also do other videos. I do 2 biblical videos on Mondays and Tuesdays when I can. And then every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday is Warhammer 40k content. I just like to let you guys know. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Mortarion, also known as the Pale King, the Death Lord, or the Prince of Decay, after he turned to chaos, was one of the original 20 Imperial Primarchs created by the Emperor of Mankind. He was given command of the Death Guard Space Marine Legion on the arrival of the Emperor to his homeworld of Barbarous, but he turned to the service of chaos during the Horus Heresy. At present, Mortarion is the greatest demon prince of Nurgle and the Daemon Primarch of the Death Guard Chaos Space Marines. He recently returned to Imperial space for the first time in 10,000 standard years when he led the forces of the Plague God in the invasion of the realm of Ultramar during the Plague Wars. Alright, so we're going to get into history. So, the childhood. When the 20 Primarchs of the Space Marine Legions were scattered across the galaxy in a mysterious accident, one came to rest on the planet Barbarous, a world wreathed in poisonous fog, where the most advanced technology was that of steam power. The pre-industrial population of the world was split into 2 groups: the controlling warlords, inhuman necromancers with fantastic warp-derived powers, and the human settlers, who had been trapped on the planet millennia before and were now forced to eke out an existence essentially as farmers in the poison-free valleys of the planet, fearing the wrath of the necromantic overlords and their foul creatures. The Primarch child was taken in by the most powerful of the Wow. One of these days I'll learn how to read. Of the overlords, who found him against the corpses of a battlefield where he had been engaged in one of the endless conflicts he fought with the other overlords. The infant Primarch was screaming and wailing where a normal child would have suffocated and died long before. The High Overlord, Necaer of Barbarous, took the child in with the intention of creating a son and heir, naming him Mortarion, Child of Death, in the local Barbarian dialect of High Gothic. Mortarion was kept by the High Overlord in a small tower positioned at the limit of even his superhuman tolerance to toxins in the air, while Necaer moved his own fortress to the highest peak of the world, beyond where even Mortarion could go. So we got Shrek in Warhammer 40k. Sorry. Anyways, he trained the child, who had highly keen intellect and a voracious appetite for knowledge. Mortarion learned everything from battle doctrine to arcane secrets, from artifice to stratagem. However, the young Primarch's questions began to turn towards subjects the Overlord did not want to talk about, namely the pitiful creatures in the valleys that the many warlords preyed upon for corpses to reanimate and bodies to the warp. So, the biblical part's going to be interesting here. I'll just say that. It kind of goes on with this death theme. So, very interesting. Anyways, I'm sorry. Deliverance of Barbarous. Finally, knowing he would be unable to find the answers he desired from his adoptive father, Mortarion broke out of the broke out of the fortress that had been his home and prison after killing several guards stationed at the gates of the fortress, and he headed for the valleys of Barbarous. Breaking through the poisonous mists, Mortarion discovered that the prey of the warlords were in fact the same species as he, and he swore to deliver them from their oppression. The people of Barbarous were slow to accept this pale, gaunt stranger from the mountains, but Mortarion was given a chance to prove his worth when creatures enthralled to another warlord attacked the village. Seeing that the peasants were unable to effectively fight back, Mortarion joined the fray, wielding a massive harvesting scythe that made short work of the beasts. Okay, that makes sense. I guess that's where he got the scythe, huh? Okay, the warlord smiled when Mortarion advanced upon him, and withdrew to the apparent safety of the deadly fog, only to be pursued and butchered by the inhumanly resilient Primarch. Or inhumanly, my goodness. Accepted into the village without further reservation. Mortarion began to train the villagers in the art of warfare. Soon, representatives from the other villages journeyed to learn from Mortarion, while the villagers scattered across the valleys of the world. Duh. My brain's turning to mush right before your eyes. Anyways, I don't know why I went southern there. World were transformed into strong points. Mortarion traveled from the settlement to settlement, teaching, building, and defending his people. He recruited the toughest, most resilient men he could find, forming them into small units that trained under his supervision. He enlisted the aid of blacksmiths, craftsmen, artificers to create suits of armor that would allow men to travel through the poisonous fog. As each battle in the mist was fought, Mortarion and his death guard would learn how to better adapt the armor and themselves to reach the more poisonous heights. Eventually, only one peak denied them access, the one on which Mortarion's adoptive father had made his home. Coming to the Emperor. Despite his adoptive father being a ruthless necromancer, Mortarion felt reluctant to attack the man who took him in and called off the planned attack on the advance of Callous Typhon, who warned that he was not yet ready to face the High Overlord, even with the new suits of armor. Returning to the village, Mortarion's mood darkened when he found his people talking not of his victory, but of the arrival of a benevolent stranger who promised salvation to the people of Barbarous. Finding this stranger in conference with the village elders, Mortarion claimed that his people needed no outside help. The stranger commented that even Mortarion and his death guard were having trouble pacifying the final warlord, and offered a challenge. If Mortarion could defeat the High Overlord Nakaer, the stranger would leave. If not, Mortarion had to swear fealty to the stranger and the Imperium of Man he represented. Ignoring the protests of his death guard, Mortarion left alone to confront his adoptive father. Motivated by a compulsion to prove himself to the stranger below, the confrontation was brief. The air surrounding the High Overlord's fortress was so poisonous and toxic that parts of Mortarion's armor began to rot away. Yikes. That would have to be acidic too, wouldn't it? Anyways, excuse the noise in the background. Anyways, he collapsed at the gates of the Overlord's citadel, bellowing challenges to Nakaer. The final thing Mortarion saw before he almost blacked out into unconsciousness was the Overlord of Barbarous coming to kill him and mocking him for his weakness and failure. At the same time, he heard a voice that was not his own within his head, seeking to make contact and impart what it called the true lesson about how to defeat death. Mortarion did not know it, but his voice was that of the chaos god Nurgle, who had already chosen Mortarion to become his greatest mortal champion. But it was then, at the final moment before the High Overlord at last took the life of his wayward foster son, that the stranger suddenly appeared, leaping between the two and slaying the care with the single thrust of his flaming sword. When he recovered, Mortarion swore fealty to the stranger as he had promised, who revealed himself to be Mortarion's true gene-father, the Emperor of Mankind. The Emperor granted Mortarion command of the 14th Space Marine Legion. Anyways, then known as the Dusk Raiders, who quickly adopted the name iconography, or my goodness, I forget how you say that word. It's, I guess, iconography, and dogma, and Mortarion's death guard. However, the Emperor's slaying of the Primarch's adoptive father, the Emperor's denial of his final vengeance, of the proof that he was worthy, became a grudge Mortarion forever after held against him. It would coil within his heart like a rancid viper, and provide the seed of weakness that the plague god Nurgle would later exploit. Alright guys, so we're going to move on to the biblical side of things now. So we're going to start with Deuteronomy 3:11. So for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. This word here is Rephaim. So hold on to that thought. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. Is it not in Rabath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, after the cubit of a man. So pay attention to this Rephaim word. So, Job 26:5-6. Dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof. Hell is naked before him, and destruction had no covering. So we got dead things are formed from under the waters. Alright, so we're going to go into what is Rephaim in the Strong's Concordance, that is, if you don't know what that is. So it is the inhabitants of the area east of Jordan, but it gets a little dicier. So we go down here. So giants, Rephaims, or Rapha, from Rapha, in the sense of invigorating a giant. Giant, Rapha. So let's go see what Rapha means. To heal. So, become fresh, completely healed. Heal, healed, healer, healing, heals, physician, physicians, purified, reappeared, interesting, repaired, and take care. So these Rephaims would be kind of like your undead almost, right? Your reanimated ones is really what their name means. So just like, Mortarion here, right? What was it? So you guys can see it. The Pale King, the Death Lord, the Prince of Decay. So now we go to here, 2 Kings 1:2. And Hazahiah, sorry. Let me say that again. My goodness. And Hazahiah fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria, and was sick. And he sent messengers, and he said unto them, Go, inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease. So Beelzebub also means Lord of the Flies. And I'm sure you guys are knowing where I'm going to be going with this. Now I have covered him before, but anyways. So as you guys can see, so Beelzebub, Lord of the Fly. a Philistine deity worshipped at Ekron. Some people say this is Satan. I don't think so. I think it's another god or whatever, or entity, I should say. So there you guys go. Alright, so we're going to get into Nurgle, also known as the Plague Lord, Grandfather Nurgle, the Plague God, Lord of Pestilence, the Fly Lord, Plague Father, and the Lord of Decay. Among many other honorifics is the Chaos God of disease, decay, despair, destruction, death, and rebirth. Very interesting. In particular, the emotion of despair in mortals empowers the Plague God more than any other. Nurgle was the third of the Chaos Gods to fully awaken within the warp, emerging during the second millennia in the midst of Old Earth's European Middle Ages, as great plague swept across the world, heralding the god's birth. Come on, mouse. Nurgle is the Chaos God mostly directly involved with plight of mortals, particularly humans who suffer so acutely from the fear of death, perhaps the oldest fear of that species, or any other. While Nurgle is the god of death and decay, it is also the god of rebirth. I like how they say it. Fits, right, with the chaos gods. But anyways, decay is simply one of the part of the cycle of life, without which no life could grow. In the same way, Nurgle is also the god of perseverance and survival, while those who wish to spread decay and corruption are certainly amongst its followers. There are also those who wish to endure, to become resilient enough to handle the difficulties and opportunities presented by an uncaring universe. Many of those afflicted by Nurgle's poxes usually turn to the god in order to escape the pain and sheer despair caused by sickness and disease. Nurgle is the great lord of decay and master of plague and pestilence. All things, no matter how solid and permanent they seem, are liable to eventual corruption and death. Even the process of creation is but the precursor to destruction and decay. The bastion of today is tomorrow's ruin. The maiden of the morning is the crone of the night, and the hope of the moment is but the foundation of regret. Yeah, this, as you can see, gets a little bit longer here. But you guys get the gist. So he's a chaos god. They call him Grandfather Nurgle, Plague Lord, and all that stuff. But anyways, you guys know that. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Sorry, I'm all scatterbrained. I got a lot going on. So apologies. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day.